Urban exploring, in my opinion, is exploring unseen spaces, spaces which are not regularly visited by people, spaces that we define as beautiful but other people define as strange and weird places that you wouldn't think of going to.
We are just going to many different places, whatever we can find. Usually it's not so legal, and what we're trying to do is to go to places which have a photographic interest. So basically if they look nice, it's great. You know, cranes, rooftops, decaying stuff for those who find it pretty, trains, anything which can look pretty.
There's two different types. You've got sort of urban exploration, which is exploring derelict sites, I believe, and then you've got infiltration of live sites, which you tend to kind of get the guys who are more dedicated doing, because it's a little bit riskier and can verge on criminal trespass on top of civil trespass.
The legality kind of jumps from place to place and from, you know, location to location. So you might get caught one place and the security guard will just tell you to leave. You get caught another place, you end up in jail.
There are plenty of places where we've been and we've been called by the owners or security and it was just fine. We haven't even met the police or anything. You know, this is perfectly fine. There are other places where we've been taken to the police station, we spent the night in there, still we don't have any record, we're just fine. So I guess this is okay. Now, I reckon there are probably some places, if we had been caught in there, it would have been a little bit worse, but, you know, not anything that bad.
I guess it's an interest in the forgotten things, you know, the things that people have, you know, buildings that are going to get demolished or that haven't been demolished simply because people don't have the money to demolish them. It's an interest in infrastructure, you know, basically seeing what the tube tunnels look like from outside a tube train. It's an interest in seeing where the water goes when it disappears underground. It's an interest in going places people don't go, you know. The old caveman saying is you never know what's around the next bend.
I think the interest is the adventure. We're not going just to take photos. We happen to take photos, but really what we want to have is the adrenaline rush and, you know, the feeling that you're somewhere that you don't belong to, that you could be caught at any time and just have to run and, you know, it's adventure. When I was a kid, I was reading all these books about fantasy, about superheroes, people doing stuff which is pretty astounding, and I was not able to do it. In real life, you cannot do any of this stuff, and it was kind of frustrating. And you know, I carried on playing RPGs on the computer, stuff like that, and it's again frustrating. Whenever you leave the computer, in real life, you don't have superpowers, you don't have a sword, you cannot do anything. And then I finally realized that all this kind of crap is possible, because the kind of stuff we are doing, if you mention it to people who are not into it, they're gonna be like, fuck, you can do that. It's not possible. How did you actually do that?
payoff's different for everybody. Sometimes the payoff is getting an amazing photo. For some people, it's getting drunk and passing out in a really cool location and waking up and going, wow, how the hell did I end up here? For others, it's just, you know, it's the payoff is seeing these places that other people don't see, and places that you value, you know. It's not particularly dangerous. I mean, yeah, the authorities will always say it's dangerous because essentially it is, but common sense prevails usually. You know, people aren't going to go into a place, you know, they're not going to go into an abandoned building, see, you know, entire floors of rusting metal and just go through, you know, a waltz across them, hoping something's going to break and that they're going to fall to their death. Likewise, they're not going to intentionally pop a manhole and go down a sewer when it's, you know, when there's a horrendous thunderstorm outside. So as long as you're careful, as long as you pay attention, you know, I guess the best example is exploring live metros. You know, I mean, in Paris, people waltz around the Paris metro during service, which is exceptionally dangerous because you've got moving trains, you've got live rails, you know. All it takes is for you to trip over and fall on a live rail and you get fried, or fall in front of a train. But people have got more sense than that.
No, it really depends on what people are doing. If you go training when it's raining, like in Australia a few months ago, you'd certainly die. If you went into the tube, like tracks where there's zero clearance while the tubes are running, you'll get killed, that's it. But you know, if you just do the average stuff like derelict buildings, you could actually die, you could go through a floor, but it's not very likely. So, you know, I think most of the stuff we're doing is just fine.
It's part of what we do. There's risks here, and you can trip over a crack in a pavement and injure yourself. Many people every day whilst at work trip over, break their arms. I rarely see people break things whilst exploring derelict buildings, but there's more risks, I think, in everyday activities than what we do if you take a calculated risk and actually assess what you're doing.
The only time I ever thought I was going to die was down a drain in Edmonton, in Canada, and the city of Edmonton had just experienced, you know, one of those once every sort of 10-year floods. Nevertheless, I showed up and I thought I'd do some drains, and I went down a particular drain by myself, approached a very large waterfall, and thought I'd take a look up the shaft that the water was falling down. Upon approaching it, I didn't notice that the water was actually falling into a large pit, because the entire pit was covered with the foam that was being churned up by that very waterfall. And thinking I'd step onto concrete, I stepped into what was effectively a 12-foot deep pit. And to cut a long story short, the currents being created by the falling water into the pit repeatedly dragged me into the center of the pit, where I kind of choked on the foam, and after about 7 or 8 minutes of frantically treading water, I guess you could say I started to drown. You know, you start to inhale water, and I mean, in the process of falling in, I ripped off my waders, tore my backpack off. The only reason my camera and an extra lens didn't end up, you know, being dropped to the bottom of the pit was they were wrapped around my neck and they didn't, you know, hinder me in any way. In the end, I managed to get out of the pit only by swimming into the falling water and allowing the falling water to push me towards the edge of the pit.
I hurt myself whilst trying to infiltrate a derelict underground tube station, jumped off the back of a door, landed like that, crucified myself onto a nail, and it split my hand in two. So that's my main injury. I've had various cuts and bruises. from running away from security too quickly, climbing over fences too quickly. You tend to cause more damage to your clothing than your actual self.
If anyone was to injure themselves or to die based upon being inspired by photographs I took or things I wrote, I'd feel terrible. But at the same time, if they were a fully grown adult, then they should have known better.
If we do what we do, it doesn't mean that people should do it. I think that people actually go on a website, find something, think it's cool, try to do it, does not have to make us feel responsible. I think responsibility is an important thing. I think every time we go on an exploration, we know what we're doing, we take responsibility for ourselves. If I actually, broke something in a construction site, I would not think a second of suing the guys who own the construction sites, because even if actually they may be liable, I'd be to do that.
I mean, the best example were a bunch of graffiti artists drowned down a drain in Australia. Well, sorry, 2 of them drowned, the 3rd one survived. The 3rd one then spent the next 6 months blaming the cave clan. Oh, I saw it on their website, and because I saw it, I thought it was cool, so I went and did it, and then my friends died, so it's the cave clan's fault. The bottom line is, if you're going to do something risky and dangerous, it's your own responsibility.
I've seen people who actually go on exploration because they have a lot of money and they are bored, and all their money cannot purchase the experience of doing something exciting. You can try skydiving, you can try bungee jumping, that's all nice stuff, but exploration is also something which is really nice, and you cannot purchase it, so they just do it. And I've also seen people who don't have a lot of money to invest in their hobbies, and they do exploration because it's a hobby which is really cheap. You don't need to invest in anything. Maybe you want a camera if you want to take photos, but that's not even required.
If you're poor enough to live in a situation that resembles an abandoned building, why the hell would you go and explore another abandoned building? As in, if you live in a shitty, dingy council flat and all your parents are, crack addicts on benefits, why would you go and, visit a drain where other crack addicts, shoot up?
In France, in Paris, in the Catas, we've got a guy going down who's a CEO of a very big company. He's famous in France. If you say the name, people know him. There's also a lot of people who are middle class. There are lawyers, there are project managers, as much as people working on construction sites or being teachers. There's also one guy who lived in the Catas for a few days because he no longer had a home. So it's really for any kind of people, I think.
One of the things that got me the most was we were touring around places like Bulgaria and Romania, looking for abandoned buildings. Now, in those countries, abandoned buildings are never abandoned. They're not abandoned until they're piles of rubble. So we'd rock up to an abandoned power station, we'd show up at the front gates, and there'd be a family living on the site, making money from whatever they could scavenge from the site. We'd go in there with, £1,000-pound cameras and a fancy hire car, and we'd ask to take photographs, and they'd stand around going, why? And it really brought home to me the fact that we were essentially being tourists in what was these people's lives. We were taking advantage of the fact that we had middle class money, which in countries like Britain isn't that much, whereas they were poor. You know, and it actually made me feel bad because, you know, while we go in there and take photos of all this abandoned shit that we see, we then go back to a nice house, you know, with heating and electricity and cable television, satellite television, whereas they continue to live there.
If in 10 years' time drains are no longer accessible, we are not going to do drains, but there'll be other stuff. Same thing for cranes. If we can't do any more crane because they figure out a new way to, you know, raise an alarm whenever people are climbing them, we're not going to be able to do cranes, but there's always be some stuff to do. Maybe some stuff which hasn't been invented yet.
Just, you know, it's like I said before, have fun, you know. Do it because you enjoy it and because you enjoy seeing these amazing places that most people don't see. And the moment you stop enjoying it, try and find something else to do.
Wait, let's go. No. What do you think, Jim? No. Oh shit. Well, I think that answered that.
Urban exploring is just seeing the city. It's about learning about the place you live in. It's about experiencing the places in the city that maybe not everybody gets to see, but are really important to making the city work.
Urban exploring to me is simply seeing things that don't generally get to be seen. You know, being able to see these incredible things that are sitting here just rotting away, waiting to be demolished, and it's nice to be able to get in there and see them before they'll never be seen again. Take some pictures, you know, make a record.
You know, essentially, we're trespassing every time we go into these places, so on some level what we're doing is always illegal, but you know, if we're actually caught in these places, it's treated quite differently depending on where we are. Europe is more relaxed in those regards. When I've explored the United States, if we get caught, you know, for instance, security guards can actually try and, you know, they can restrain you until police get there, and police tend to take it much more seriously, you know, whether or not that's justified.
It's really strange because people have an urge to explore their environment, no matter what that environment is. If they grow up in the country, they want to wander around the fields, they want to climb the mountains, they want to go in the woods. If they grow up in a city, they want to walk the streets, they want to see the tunnels, they want to explore their environment. And when we're in nature, when we're in national parks, when we're in the countryside, nobody thinks it's strange. We all grow up with stories about people wandering in the woods, swimming in the rivers, exploring their natural environment in America here. but yet somehow that's taken as not natural in our urban environment. Exploring the subway tunnels, climbing bridges, seeing our abandoned infrastructure is taken as something that's kind of strange and not allowed. And I don't really know why that is. I don't know why the authorities are so uptight about it. To me, it's a completely natural thing to do. This is disused. Always keep an eye out no matter what, even if this isn't used, even if you don't think trains are coming, always be alert, always keep an eye out, never get slack.
There's danger in everything that we do in life. It's always a risk-reward ratio that we're considering, even when we're just crossing the street. You know, here comes this bus. Are we going to book it and try and make it in front of the bus? You know, you take those risks all the time. And there is an element of danger to urban exploration, of course. And I think a lot of us, you know, really push that boundary because we want to experience dangerous things, the adrenaline rush that you get from putting yourself in danger. But we're doing that as knowledgeable, capable individuals.
Obviously it's dangerous. I mean, we're in a really old mill at the moment, and there's holes everywhere. You could easily fall, things could break, stairs could get loose. Just be cognizant of your surroundings. Just use common sense overall, and I think everything will be just fine.
I mean, the thing about urban explorers is everybody has different motivations for what they do. And anybody who tries to say urban exploration is this, urban exploration is that, they're deluding themselves. You're dealing with people who inherently do what they want to do and don't like to follow rules. And anybody who tries to categorize them or create rules or create norms of this kind of culture is being silly. You know, these are people who almost by definition do what they want, break the rules they think are worth breaking. And so saying urban exploration is this or that just doesn't make any sense.
The larger urban exploration community that exists is sort of based around web forums, and it's been that way since the early 2000s. And those are large groups of people that, you know, are all sort of operating with their friends but then sharing stuff on the forums. But increasingly in particular cities like London, Paris, Brescia, Moscow, Minneapolis, you've got smaller groups of people who have been, you know, sort of upping the bar, doing more difficult stuff, and increasingly not sharing that information on the forums. And so I think that's actually forming into sort of a new group of explorers.
Each city has their own community, and it is neat seeing the way different peoples from different community interact and how they explore, what they like to see in these buildings. you know, sometimes it is quite a bit different than what we like to see. And it is kind of generalizing, because I like, even amongst Minneapolis, I like to see different things that other people do. I love the mechanization, I love all the old machines and equipment. That's some of my favorite stuff, and I like explaining that to people. But yeah, it was really neat seeing other people, especially other people from other countries, was probably the most fascinating part, you know.
Yeah, it was fantastic. There was an 80-story building called the Legacy Tower in the middle of the city, and we're sitting on a rooftop, and Mark looks up and he goes, "Hey, I think we should try to get up there." And basically, we walked in the lobby and, you know, acted as if we lived in the building. It was a residence. We followed some residents in. They swiped their key card. We got in the lift. We made it up to the roof, and it was the most incredible view I've ever seen. We had, you know, 8 people from 5 countries maybe up on that rooftop, and that was a golden moment for me to realize that, you know, that we've got explorers from all over the world that come together to do stuff like this.
If you asked 100 New Yorkers at random, all things being equal, would you love to sit on top of the Brooklyn Bridge looking out at the city? 100 of them would say yes. It's something that's romantic, it's something that's appealing, it's something that, you know, anybody watching this is going to be able to understand. And as such, the reward is a lot. And as it turned out, we thought the risk was a lot. You know, it's the kind of thing where you're exposed. It's the kind of thing where you have to have a little bit of luck. But quite honestly, as it turns out, it's not as much as we thought it would be. It just took a little bit of, you know, we're just gonna do it. You know, at a certain point, you have to say, ain't nothing to it but to do it and just go.
She can't really explain it.
The family doesn't know what is causing it. They say it scares her as well as themselves. They believe they are demonic spirits.
They come from the night. I wish this had never happened to me.
Holy shit. Oh, that's hot.
If there's any indication that urban exploration is about the community and not about the places necessarily, Las Vegas is a perfect example. I spent basically the entire summer there, and, you know, went out night after night into the drain system, trying to explore buildings in that city, and there's no community there. There's no one to collaborate with. However, there was a guy called Matthew O'Brien who had written a book called Beneath the Neon, where he spent essentially 2 years exploring the drains under Las Vegas and realized that there was an entire community of people living in the drains. I obviously was running into these people. I was running into homeless people in the drains, and that's something I've never experienced before. In London, in Paris, you know, you don't see that. But in the end, you know, I ended up meeting a lot of really cool people that lived in those drains. And I guess when it comes down to it, the community there is, you know, homeless people. It's not explorers going into those places.
I always do feel a sense of responsibility for everybody I'm with, and as a result, I really only feel comfortable doing these things with certain people.
Keep in mind, this is a community of people who do take heavy responsibility for their actions. And if I'm in a situation where, for instance, I'm tying off my friend's ropes, of course I'm taking responsibility for their life. If those ropes fail and they die, that's my fault. But if I post a photo online and somebody decides to go out and do what we've done and they don't do the appropriate research and they don't know how to tie off ropes and they kill themselves, that is not my fault.
The candy stripes on the walls, that usually means that there's no clearance. So that means that if you're standing in this segment of tunnel and a train passes, there's not enough room for you to stand up against the side and not get hit by a train. The cops set up traps here to catch graffiti writers. Generally the rule is like run if you don't have a gun drawn on you. If they have a gun out, like, you probably want to stop and do whatever they say. You've got a camera in your hand, like, it's very plausible that they can mistake it for a gun and they will shoot you if they think you have a gun.
I mean, the end result for me is just I get to see the city, I get to experience the city, I get to see it for myself, I get to learn it for myself. Some people might be content to read a book about the subways, some people might be content to watch a documentary about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge, and I value that, and I do that myself. But in addition to that, I want to walk through the subway tunnels. I want to see what they say for myself. I want to experience it for myself. I want to climb the Brooklyn Bridge. I want to see the view from the top for myself, not on a video. I want to have those experiences because those experiences teach me about the city, and those experiences contribute to my understanding and contribute to hopefully helping me learn and grow and give back to the city I love.
The thing that's really interesting is that the more you explore, I think, you tend to see a city in that way first. So essentially you learn a city from the inside out. I mean, I've been to Paris half a dozen times and I've seen more of the city underground than I have above ground. If someone asks me for a good restaurant in Paris, I have no clue. And it's the same thing for Chicago, it's the same thing for Detroit, it's the same thing for so many places that I've been. I really have no idea what the city is like, but I also feel like I have an intimate connection with those places because I've explored them. Of my, either friends from back home or college friends don't understand it whatsoever. Yeah, try explaining drain boating to someone. Spandex. Well, first and foremost, it's just a celebration and a get-together hosted here in Minneapolis by the people that love this hobby, and we're all here for a good time. It's going to be crazy. We'll showcase how truly crazy and, even more important, how incredibly hardcore Minneapolis and St. Paul is. Hopefully, show some people from out of town all the great things there are. Well, at least some of the great things there are to see here in the city, and I think it's going to be a great time.
So tonight is a
have successfully initiated first crossover between urban exploration and New Orleans booty bounce.
If you've just started exploring, don't worry about the community. Just do what you want to do the stuff you enjoy. You know, if you like industrial ruins, go to industrial ruins. If you get bored with that and you feel like doing infrastructure, do infrastructure. Don't worry about what other people think of it.
Learn as much as you can before you do what you have to do. You got something you want, you have a goal, you have an itch, you have a place you want to go. Don't just head there blind. Take some time, have some patience, learn what you have to learn to be safe, to have fun, to just be able to do what you want to do.
Take your time, make the friends you want to make, and don't worry about busting epics. Don't worry about doing the big stuff right away, you know. Work your way up to it and enjoy it. Enjoy the whole process, because it's not about doing the latest and greatest thing right away. It's about going out with your friends and having a good time. And eventually, if it's a good group of friends, you're going to start doing the best stuff.
Try to scratch the itch in the best way possible. And mostly, definitely, do not do what we're about to do right now.